purpose and fortified with love. Discover the best peach cobbler in the world at Latunji's Palate, 1400 Park Avenue South in Minneapolis. Visit the website at latunjispalate.com.
Portions of the following program may be pre-recorded.
AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. It's the Matt McNeil Show for your Monday. Good to be with you. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. I'm extremely geeked out today because Dara Moskowitz-Grumdahl is going to join us. She's one of the best and most awarded food writers in the country. She works over at Minneapolis St. Paul Magazine. She has an incredible article called What is Northern Food? And it takes a twist there. I'm not going to say anything else about it. It takes a real turn there. But my God, is she 1,000% right? And I think that, you know, it goes, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to save that from when Dara is with us. We're going to join, she's going to join us in the 4 o'clock hour to talk about things. Patrick, how are you today?
Doing good. You know, it's kind of funny. The snow that fell, I think we got a little more than they forecast, but you know, it was the easy stuff to clean off your car with like one stroke and it all just goes off in a column.
Or else if you just kind of go forward really quick and then slam on the brakes, off she goes. It's clean. I will get to that a little bit later on. I will get to that because you know what? Weather people are right. You should not be bashing on them. You shouldn't be attacking them. You shouldn't be vicious. But we got to talk a little bit about the last two storms. I'll get to that here in a little bit. Had a great weekend. I went over to the Wiseman Art Museum over at the University of Minnesota. And I was treated sometimes, and I got to tell you, go over there and see there's an art piece there by Lee Nam Lee. And it's part of this touring group about digital art. And it's just phenomenal. And when you think about where art is going and where art is going to be in 50 years, stuff like what Lee Nam Lee is doing is exactly what it is. And it's so good. It's so deep. It captures pop art. It captures post-pop. You can't tear your eyes away from it. It's just magnificent. Go see it. I saw that, had a great time. And of course, the Wiseman. If you haven't been to the Wiseman Art Museum over at the University of Minnesota, it is a phenomenal museum, and it's small, but at the same time, he's got a lot of punch in there. We got a lot of great pieces, so go check that out. I also went to the Mall of America yesterday, and I want to just say this: this is the first time since March of 2020 I walked into that mall, and I was like, oh, it's back to normal. That was the first time. We got in there and we were on the first floor, and we come into the first floor, and I said, wow, this is really busy on the first floor. And we're on the one side, by Urban Outfitters and the Holiday gas station that's over there. So we come in there, it's really busy. I said, let's go to the third floor. My wife is not a big fan of crowds. I said, let's go to the third floor. The third floor was just as packed. Unbelievable. There is a line out. There's apparently a sushi place there over by Moose Mountain Golf. It's the conveyor belt sushi, very Japanese, where the sushi comes by on a little conveyor chart and conveyor belt, and it comes down and you grab what plate you want, and then you save your plates, and then you pay what at the end. There was a line out the freaking door for that place. I'm going to guess 20 deep. If we wanted to go to that, it'd be an hour wait. It's back. I'm the first one to say it. I didn't think it was going to be a big deal. A lot of people go to the Mall of America. The Mall of America is a draw. It is 952-946-6205. But I got to start off with something. That's unbelievable in this day and age. But to get there, I have to go down religion corner for a second. Now, once again, religion disclaimer. You do or don't do whatever it is you do or don't want to do. I'm a Christian, was a Catholic for many years, and right now I'm practicing Lutheran. I got to kind of do a little prepper for this because you have to kind of understand a little bit of the background story here. I am the way I look at Christianity. And once again, this is not about converting anyone. You do what you want to do. My mentality is we're supposed to all be judged by our own actions on the planet when we go up to the pearly gates. You do what you want to do. It's not my job. I can't point to anyone else and say, well, they told me to do something. No, I can't. So I think religion is, if you choose to partake, is a personal journey. And you should make that personal journey, and it should be one you're comfortable with. All right? All right. I am, as a Christian, I put a lot of weight in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I mean, that's if you don't know, and that's in the first four books of the New Testament. Those are the books that basically tell the story of Jesus's life on earth and resurrection. And so it's quite literally, those are the four books that make Christians Christian. That without those four books, without the story of Jesus, from birth and Bethlehem to crucifixion, death, and resurrection, those are all there. That's what you're getting. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Acts of the Apostles comes up. Paul has a lot of letters in there to various groups, and I'll get to that here in a second. But those are the books. Now, I want to step back and say, I like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The Gospel of Matthew, particularly, it's a gospel that basically says, don't be a jerk. That's like, look out for the little guy. He was a guy that, Jesus was a guy that went out and got the meekest of us all, the people that were on the margins, the people that were tormented and tortured by society, and he embraced them and he welcomed them in. That's what he was telling us to do. And, that whole feeding the hungry, taking care of the sick, welcoming in strangers from strange lands. I mean, that is him basically saying, help each other and don't be a jerk. And that is Jesus. And that's why I focus a lot on those passages. What I have noticed is conservatives rarely, if ever, talk about Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And I made this point actually on a story completely unrelated to the reason I'm bringing this up right now. You'll understand in a sec. Yesterday, there's a story, was that the Texas Tech basketball coach brought up, I think it's either Ephesians or Colossians, Paul's letters to the Ephesians or the Colossians, where it basically says a slave must obey the master. Now, this is, once again, I want to make sure we're understanding. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John talk about the story of Jesus. Paul's letters are Paul. Paul was not Jesus. Now, biblical people will tell you the entire Bible is sacred text, understood. But this was Paul. And when you look at these texts, and this is not about questioning. Once again, I am a Christian. I consider myself a Christian. I like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Absolutely. But I will make the point is the oldest passages in the Bible, the oldest passages we have date from about 100. That's in Matthew and John, I believe. Those are the two oldest, and it's not the entire, but it's not like, here's the book, there it is. No, there's some passages found on papyrus in the Middle East in various locations. That is the oldest, all right? Most of the Bible is drawn from texts that were written well after the death and resurrection of Jesus, as if you follow the Christian faith, right? Long afterwards. It's expected that Romans, for example, Paul's letter to the Romans was written in Greece somewhere around, I think it was 50 to 57, 58, somewhere around there. That's when the original text was written. The oldest versions of that text, not from that time, date from 200. So to put it in perspective, it would be like something happened in 1870 and we've discovered a text describing that event today. That's not, once again, that's not the entire book of Romans. Romans is boom. It's not there. It's just certain passages. Some of the passages of Romans were not discovered until the like 700. That's like the oldest versions of those texts that exist, 600, 700 AD. So there is, and think about that. I mean, that's quite a bit of distance between the original text source material and there. I mean, it is a long time gone. Putting aside just the way that language changes over hundreds of years, it is a very different thing. And one of the things that you have to be careful of when it comes to, passages is that if you were someone who was up and coming in the church and you wanted your point of view remembered, you basically wrote it into someone else's text. And there have been some studies that have shown you that indeed that there are some texts that clearly came from later passages that were not from that time. And so you do have, it's an interesting thing. You have to have some faith, I guess you would say. But when I look at it, I look at the faith of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the original testaments. I don't look at it so much Romans. And Romans is an interesting book because it's basically, I understand why Paul wrote it. Paul wrote it basically as a guidepost for people who are starting in a new religion on how you get salvation, how you can clean the soul up, that sort of thing. But it does kind of go down into, vilifying. I mean, it's kind of like the Paul's letters, like I said, either Ephesians or Colossians. It's where it basically talks about, the slave must obey the master, which was used by slave owners for many years to say Jesus signed off on slavery. Let me tell you something. Jesus never would have signed off on slavery. All right. Romans basically goes out and and basically attacks, sexual, deviance as he describes, deviancies which are described there. So, yeah, I'm not a big fan. I mean, especially when you look at Jesus is about loving and welcoming and caring and being compassionate. All of a sudden we have, it's like, you can't be this kind of person, that kind of thing. So you got to take it with a grain of salt. It has come up to the individual. Let me give you another great example of this. There's a church running around right now where like all the priests are decorated with bullets. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Jesus wouldn't be on board with that. I'm pretty sure Jesus would not be on board with that. Reverend Billy Sunday, 1800s, he changed thou shalt not kill to thou shalt not murder so he could basically, all these people who are killing all these people out in the West, I killed him for $3, but I didn't murder him. I just killed him for $3. He's like, okay, well, I guess you're still going to be, okay, fine. Technicalities. See, humans can change things. That's why you got to be kind of careful. I'll go to the source material that says you're not supposed to be a jerk. You're not supposed to be a jerk. If you're a Christian, you're not supposed to be a jerk. Don't tell me who to hate. Tell me who to love. Tell me who to care for. Get a food. If someone's hungry, get them a sandwich. Someone's sick, get them the health care. Welcome in strangers from strange lands. Don't build a wall, you jerk. Ta-da! See. All right. Now, so you understand where I come from, a little bit about Romans. All right. So today, I had a medical appointment. I am not going to say any more than that. I am in there waiting to be seen. I get called into the back. I'm waiting to be seen. I will say this. It was not at any of the major hospitals or anything like that. It was not there. I'm waiting in the waiting room, and the woman is asking me about the chest brace. Bracey here, my little friend who hopefully I'm done with on Friday. We'll have to see. And I said, I got hit by a drunk driver, alleged drunk driver, I should say, alleged drunk driver. And yeah, it's a long haul, all these things. And she says, now, once again, this is in a business environment. I am there for a medical appointment. Have you prayed to God? Part of it like, whoa, you're not supposed to ask that question in one of these places. But you see, I wanted to see where this was going to go. And okay, fine. I'll let whatever the eventual lawsuit is, I'll let you guys figure that out later on. So I decided to play. I was like, well, yeah, I have. I talked about, the journey I had. I mean, I don't, as you can tell, I don't really have a hard time talking about religion. I talked about, the Fairview Southdale pastor who was just brilliant and helped us kind of get through those first few days. And Father McNeil, who gave me some very nice words of condolence, and Pastor Jason from the church we're attending right now, where it was wonderful, and just came to our house and sat down, and even though we weren't necessarily members of their church, and sat down and was there and was visited with us for an hour. It was just wonderful. So now, let me explain something too. One thing here as we go through this conversation. if this is a person who's just saying, oh, are you Christian? All right, I just want to find out, are you a God-fearing person? All right, mission accomplished. I've just said yes. I've talked about my numerous conversations with religious personnel. Boom. And we're done. Nope. Eventually, she kept asking questions about, what do you about like this? I'm like, what do you think about Romans? Now, once again, that's why I brought up Romans. I wanted to give you a little history. And I said, well, that's Paul's letter to the Romans. And, I kind of go with Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And, I go with, the story. That's kind of the basis of who I am as a person. Now, once again, we're supposedly at this point on the same team. We're both Christians. All right, great. You need to read, I think, a little bit more about that because I think salvation is so important. Now, she had asked me earlier, have I prayed for the individual that hit me? And I haven't. And I'm going to be honest, I haven't. I hoped that this was the rock bottom for them, that once they're done with any potential legal issues, that they realize the mistake that they made if found guilty. Innocent until proven guilty. But I would kind of hope that they would, I would kind of hope that this would be out of there. But have I prayed for them? No, I have not. I try to be a decent human being. Eventually, I probably will say a prayer for this individual, maybe even go light a candle. But, right now, as I work through this, I'm kind of dealing with a lot of things on that level. And I said, and I said, so I thought that was a good question, at least. Now, once again, this is in a medical office. This is like this. I got to tell you the truth. I'm stunned at the level of intensity that this person is having with this religious conversation, which once again, they are the ones who instigated, and I kept trying to put off. Okay, we can clearly stop talking about it now. Oh, nope. Here comes another question. Can I ask you about this? Can I ask about this? And eventually she just kind of gets to the point where it's like, you need to focus on Romans. And I'm like, okay, wait a second here. I've told you I'm Christian. I told you my point of view of Christianity. I've told you how I look at this, and you keep coming back at me like I'm wrong. Because I'm not taking the passages that you think I need to take and giving them more provenance than the ones I want to give. Now, first of all, you wonder why people aren't going to church, that religion is becoming a less and less popular thing. It's stuff like this. It's the fact that, have you prayed to God? Yes, I have. Okay, great. We're done with this conversation. No, it was clear that the reason why she kept coming at me was because she wanted me to say something very specific and agree with her interpretation, which is no. But as well, if I can say, you might, if you are in the medical profession on the West Side, I'll give you that little clue too. You might want to have a conversation with HR in regards to what is appropriate. Because first of all, I got to tell you the truth. It kind of torqued me that, once again, it clearly wasn't about just, I'm trying to convert you to Jesus. I'm not. It was, I had to kind of believe their version of it, which is, no, religion is an individual thing. And I'm sorry you think so little of me, that I'm a sinner, that I'm a bad guy, that whatever the case may be, because I'm not following the way you want me to follow, but I am not your monkey to dance for you when you start playing the frickin' accordion. I'm not. And nor am I. The disclaimer again, you do or don't do whatever it is you do or don't want to do. My job on this planet is not to tell you how to worship, for God's sakes, or if you even need to worship. For God's sakes, if you are happy, whatever way you are, God bless you. That's the world we should have. But stop with this. Stop with it. It has to be this way. Because you know what that leads to? It leads to priests wearing freaking bullets. That's what. Because some guy comes in there and says, oh, I'm going to put my words into Paul's letters and see they'll be remembered for history. Or it becomes Billy Sunday coming out there and saying, I'm going to just change thou shalt not kill a commandment so I can get more parishioners. Or some guy doing some fan fiction in the 1400s to add the rapture in, which has nothing to do with the Bible per se. Or it becomes guys wearing bullets saying Jesus loves guns. You're happy with your religion. God bless you. Knock yourself out. But stop trying to convert people. That's not your job. Especially when you seem to just be upset that I wasn't doing it the way you wanted me to do it. Now, I am not going to call this office. I am not. I'm just going to wait for the story of the lawsuit because it is coming. Because if you are that brazen to do this kind of a conversation with someone as a client in a medical office, there is a lawsuit coming and it's going to go deep and hard. Okay, I'm just going to let you know. And when it comes, yeah. But the reality is, how in the hell do you allow people to do that in your office? And yeah, I got to tell you the truth. I was stunned. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. We'll take a break. Come on back. It's the Matt McNeil Show right here on AM 950.
International Women's Day is on March 8th. Join us in celebrating by supporting the Equal Rights Amendment, or ERA. This is not your grandma's ERA. The new ERA language protects people regardless of race, color, creed, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, age, disability, ancestry, or national origin. Bring your friends and family to the Minnesota Capitol for ERA Capital Action Day on March 8th. Let's send a message that equality has no qualifiers. More at eramn.org.
Hi, this is Laura, and I want to tell you about my family's favorite thing. It's our wood stove. We bought it about 14 years ago from Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces. And see, the wood stove has actually paid for itself because we can keep the main area that we live in toasty warm with this great moist heat. But more important than saving money, it has actually improved our lives. Having a fire simplifies life. It provides comfort. It sort of takes the chill out of winter.
I'm Peter Solak. In 1977, I started Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces, and I experienced the simple joy of warming myself by a fire. I also realized that the place and the way we embrace fire has evolved in a diversity of forms and styles. So at Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces, we have brought together the widest selection of our fireplace products and technical knowledge in the Twin Cities. Our mission is to use our knowledge to help you choose the design and function that is right for you and your home.
Visit Woodland Stoves and Fireplaces today and find the right fire for you.
This is the Being Curious Show. I'm Brian Mariani, founder of No Shift Own.
And I'm Kelly Wagner, publisher of Edge Magazine. Our show is about curiously connecting teachers and seekers on a wide range of topics in a safe space.
And our intention is that these conversations spark your own curiosity that creates a life that totally lights you up.
We are on AM 950, Sundays at 2 p.m. and all podcast platforms. See you soon and stay curious.
AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, the Matt McNeil Show, 952-946-6205. No, I'm stunned. You usually don't, that's very easily you could walk into an office like that and feel like I'm going to get discriminated against it because I clearly don't follow the religious point of view of this individual. And it is stunning to me. Don't get me wrong. I understand there are some people out there who are very religious, but like I said, can I just say, whereas I took it initially as naivete, I really did. I kind of took it as just being naive and just not understanding that, this individual that was asking me about it was young. I will say that. So I'm going to they were naive and young and didn't realize it was the case. It was clear that there was, you need to read Romans again. I've read Romans. Okay. How about you read Matthew? The Gospel of Matthew. Like I said, I mean, it just, it's funny. I am not saying that there aren't some questionable passages in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but the people usually kind of that are trying to condemn people go to Paul's letters. And I don't need you to talk about my salvation as if you are on some pedestal looking down upon me. That's your perspective. I look at it as we're equal. You're standing on your ground. I'm standing on my ground. You worship how you want to. I worship how I want to. So just stop with this. You're clearly focusing on the wrong things. I am. Like I said, I have no doubt that someday, probably soon, and if it does happen, if this medical facility all of a sudden is in the news because an individual started trying to convert patients and wouldn't stop talking about it while they're in there, maybe I'll share if that ever does come to fruition. Like I said, if you are in a medical industry on the west side of town, any kind of medical, you might want to have your HR review rules. You know what? You shouldn't be talking to people about their personal religion unless you are a lay person attached with the medical institution. And if they ask for the conversation, 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. Let's take a break. Come on back. Let me get back to the weather people here, because once again, it is not right to threaten weather people, but I can understand why people are a little frustrated after the last two storms. Indeed. It is the Matt McNeil Show right here on AM 950.
Hi, this is Frank Brown, owner of Minuteman Press Uptown, Minnesota's only minority-owned union printing company. And I have big news. We've moved. Our new building in North Minneapolis is much larger with state-of-the-art equipment. That means we can get your projects done faster. We're on Washington Avenue North off I-94 at the Dowling exit, which allows for quick pickup and drop-off with plenty of free parking. And yes, we still print everything. I moved to MP Uptown because as a Black business owner, I want to be in North Minneapolis and help provide jobs. At MP Uptown, we pay above living wages, hire people who have made mistakes in the past, and believe in social justice. We have over 175 Google reviews with a 5-star rating. Let us handle your next print project, because when you support our business, you support the community. Call 612-870-0777 or visit mpuptown.com. That's mpuptown.com. We print everything.
Would you let animals pick your insurance? Do you really need to experience mayhem to get the best rates? Or how about a celebrity quarterback or fake university saving you money? There's a lot of marketing stunts when it comes to insurance, but what you really need is someone looking out for you. Call Array Insurance, and they will work hard to find you the best insurance coverage and rates. So avoid gimmicks and call Cheryl at Array, 763-504-3067 or arrayinsurance.com. Array Insurance, working hard for you.
Hi, I'm Kelly Tanky.
And I'm Joe Kirk.
Tune in to AM 950's newest show, Searching for Service, a show designed to help current and future Rotarians find purpose through service.
We are dedicated to sharing stories, experiences, and opportunities for those searching for purpose, value, and meaning.
But more importantly, connection through community. Tune in Sundays at 3 p.m. or anytime via podcasts.
It's time to stop searching and start serving.
With a look at your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. A chance of drizzle this afternoon with a high of 37, then cloudy tonight with a low of 25. Bring your friends and family to the Minnesota Capitol for ERA Capital Action Day on Wednesday, March 8th. Let's send a message that equality has no qualifiers. More at eramn.org.
AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. It's the Matt McNeil Show. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. Last night, as I was sitting down to dinner with the family, we noticed it was starting to snow yesterday. And I want to be honest. I was a little surprised about what happened with this storm, because if you look at the National Weather Service, pretty much every weather forecaster, the forecast for us was 1 to 2 inches of snow. The most of the snow was going to fall north of the metro up towards Duluth. It didn't kind of work out like that. The snow piled up more than National Weather Service was expecting in parts of the Twin Cities. Just over 3 inches was measured at MSP Airport, but some parts of the metro woke up in the 6 to 8 range, well over the forecast of 2 to 4 inches. And it should be mentioned, yesterday, the weather forecast went from 3 inches to 2. So I was like, okay, clearly this is looking like it might be going to be moving out of our area, but no. Oakdale, 7.5 inches. Victoria was at 7 inches of snow. Chanhassen, 6.5. Columbia Heights, 6.2. 6 inches in Hopkins. Where I live, Cologne was at 6 inches. Lakeville, 5. Minnetonka, 5. Golden Valley, 5. It was pretty heavy. And not only that, but, the plows came through. And, of course, we had the boulder-size balls of snow at the end of the driveway, which even if we gunned the car, we weren't going to get through. We're going to had to go out and chisel those down. That being said, there are a lot of people who are fairly upset about this. As I saw multiple times this morning, I thought this was supposed to be 2 inches of snow, not 5 inches of snow. You know what? You can't get upset with weather people, because it is a very difficult thing to forecast the weather. It is. I mean, it's the science involved is very complicated. But what I will say is it this hard for people in the weather industry to understand how the second storm in a row, the numbers were really off? The big storm we had, the nasty one, that was supposed to be 28 inches. I mean, that was, if you were there, they were talking about it. And there were more than a few of the weather people in this town who were going down that, it's going to be one of the biggest ones of all time at 28 inches. And I said on the show, I think it was like on the Tuesday, because it was a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday snow. And I think it was on the Tuesday, I said, Sven Sundgaard, who friend of the show and a fairly good meteorologist, made the point that it didn't look like the ratio of snow to water was going to be as bad as it was initially forecast, and that it could be, and I think he even pegged it like 17, 18 inches versus 25 to 28 inches. He was the first one. But I don't really remember too many other people that were out there saying that at that point. And Sven ended up being right. And once again, there are a lot of people that were upset, because it's a pretty big difference between even 25 inches, which was on the low end of the forecast amount, and 17. That's an 8-inch difference. That's 2/3 of a foot. That's not an inch or two. That's a substantial amount off. This storm was supposed to be 2 inches until, I looked at the snow last night as it was coming down. So this isn't going to be 2 inches. If this snows, I pulled up the weather radar. I was like, Doug, this is going to be 4 or 5 inches at best. Yeah, at least, because, you can tell the way it was falling. And once again, on every weather guy will tell you the same thing. It comes down to weather guy, weather gal, weather woman. We'll tell you the same thing. It comes down to where that freeze point is. Where south of that, it's rain. North of it, it's snow. And sometimes that can be off by a 100 miles or so, which it sounds like it was the case. If you're going to forecast snow, may I make the suggestion to the weather people? Admit you could be wrong. And I'm not saying this is not about ruining your credibility by any means. I think Sven Sundgaard is the most credible weather forecaster I know. Hands down. Had him on the show for a year and a half. It was always great when he was here. And he was always so smart. And he would say, it's hard to gauge this stuff. And that's the kind of coverage you want. I mean, a guy that's going to be on there and say, you know what? It could be this much snow, but it might not be. Now, Sven is wildly smart when it comes to the science behind this stuff. If you're not following his Patreon page, it's pretty good stuff. But it's just is there are very few people that have the guts to be like that. And the reason why is because viewers, clicks, newspaper buyers all want the, oh my God. And I've talked about this ad nauseum before. But now here you are, and you screwed up the other way. And I don't know if this was a case where you were gun shy after the last storm, so you didn't want to forecast it as much as it could be, because if it didn't come true, you didn't want people getting mad at you again. But it doesn't add to the credibility factor here if you're off once again by 4 to 5 inches. I'm just saying. All it does is kind of, this morning was like, oh God, what a freaking headache this is going to be. So people, don't go out and threaten weather people. Don't go on out there and attack them. Don't go do that. That's not nice. Don't do that. But at the same time, humility. You might not know. And there's nothing wrong with saying the range of the storm could be from 15 inches up to 28 inches. Just don't do it this way. Could be 15 inches, but 28 inches! 28 inches! Oh my God! 28 inches! Wow! There's a difference there. Did you just hear the difference? It's not going to lose. You're not going to lose any credibility by getting rid of the salesmanship of it. As a matter of fact, I like my weather people very sciencey and saying, you know what? Here's the ratio of where we're going to be looking at. It could be somewhere in there. Somewhere it could be this. And if you say it like that, guess what? Then I know that I could get that much snow, but I might not. I'm just, there's nothing wrong with a little humility in this stuff, because I do appreciate the fact that it is a science. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. We've talked about this guy before, and I'm glad that this guy is this guy needs to be locked up for a while. A Minneapolis man has been charged with carrying out terrorizing armed carjackings twice earlier this winter while eluding capture by law enforcement until his arrest late last month. The suspect, Donovan Goodman, 33, was charged in U.S. District Court in Minneapolis last week with carjacking and being a felon in possession of a gun in connection to a crime January 30th and February 25th. Goodman appeared in court Friday, has another hearing scheduled for Wednesday. In the meantime, he remains in federal custody without bail. Court records did not list an attorney for him. If you do let this guy out, you're asking for trouble. I can see that. This is a snapshot of the violent acts we are seeing in the Twin Cities on a regular basis, said U.S. Attorney Andrew Luger. In a statement released to the office, the full force of the U.S. Attorney's Office is focused on reducing the levels of violent crime. We will continue to work with our law enforcement partners to bring swift and certain accountability to violent criminals. I will say this. You want to bring down the crime rate, keep this guy in jail, because he himself is responsible for quite a bit of a problem. During the January 30th incident, according to the Ramsey County Sheriff's Office, a pit bull puppy was thrown from the pickup during a chase and shivered for hours in sub-zero weather until deputies rescued him from a snowy freeway embankment the next morning. Wow. According to the criminal complaint, shortly before 11 p.m. on January 30th, Ramsey County Sheriff's deputy in Little Canada attempted to stop a speeding pickup truck being driven by Goodman, and that law enforcement later determined to be stolen. Goodman fled while driving in wrong lanes and speeding. Officers used their vehicles in a colliding maneuver and brought the pickup to a halt. 2 people got out and fled. Goodman ran and leapt over a median barrier on Interstate 694, approached and stopped westbound vehicle and carjacked it at gunpoint. The vehicle was equipped with a dash camera, and its recording was later recovered as part of the investigation. About 4:20 a.m. on February 25th, Police in Minneapolis moved in on a stolen vehicle in a parking lot. Goodman and another male who were standing in the vehicle ran off. Officers gave chase. One of them used a taser to send Goodman to the ground. Goodman rolled over and pointed a handgun with a red laser sight at the officer, who quickly took cover. Again, Goodman ran from the scene. This guy's bad news, man. Soon after, a man flagged down law enforcement reported being carjacked while working as an Uber driver. He said he just picked up 2 passengers in downtown Minneapolis, where Goodman approached and offered the occupants $100 to share the ride. One of the occupants agreed, opened the door. Once inside, Goodman drew his gun with the red laser, pointed it at the back of the driver's head, and ordered everyone out of the car. The 3 exited, and Goodman drove away. Later that same day, police in St. Paul used data tracking information from Goodman's cell phone to trace him to a home in the 300 block of Burgess Street. He is surrendered about an hour later after, I believe, there was a standoff there. Goodman admitted to the Uber carjacking, but said the pointing of his gun at the officer was inadvertent. Police recovered the gun at the Burgess Street home. I should give credit to the police officer in that case for not killing him, as has been the case with a lot of these things. So taking cover and not putting 50 rounds into the guy. But still, Goodman criminal history in Minnesota includes convictions for burglary, assault, drug dealing, auto theft, and fleeing police, callously putting multiple lives at risk while brandishing firearms, including at a responding law enforcement officer. It is completely unacceptable, said William McCrary, special agent in charge of St. Paul's Field Division of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. In a statement, I appreciate the swift and decisive action by the brave agents and law enforcement officers who worked tirelessly to take this man into custody and prevent further danger to the public. Now, I want to point out that one of the things that happens sometimes, and the police are getting, I don't know, there are 2 sides to this story every time. What do you do when you have someone who has taken a car and they're flying down the highway? Do you pursue them like it's, a white Bronco on an LA highway, where you have 100 cop cars behind it, like it's the Blues Brothers, for goodness sakes? Or do you basically call off, hope they slow down and not kill someone? And the reason why I talk about this was there was the case where the kids, did you see the video footage of the kids going over the side of the bridge and almost landing on 94? And, a fairly serious crash. And then these 2 decided to try to run for it. Good luck with that. They were both captured fairly quickly. Someone said, well, they should not have been following them like that. That could have gotten someone killed. I said, no, undeniably it could have, but it looked like they came off the highway and that's where that ended. It wasn't necessarily through residential streets. Sometimes you have air support, a helicopter up there. Sometimes you have tons of cameras now across the city. I mean, it's like I said, I go back to the days when I was at Metro Traffic, and, we had a few cameras out there, but now there's cameras on pretty much every major intersection in the city. So someone's tracking you, and it's quite difficult to drive across the city and not have people being able to check your vehicle where it's at. So what do you do? Because in this case, it could be argued, and I'm not, this story doesn't say for sure, but in the first incident back in January, it sounds as if police pulled off that pursuit and Goodman got away, only to cause what looks to be a far more traumatic incident later on. Because let's face it, I imagine the Uber driver was scarred fairly. The police officer might be scarred from having a gun pointed at you. The Uber driver probably clearly is pretty scarred by this. So what do you do? I mean, because, and I don't know if there's necessarily a right or wrong answer. I mean, we all have our opinions about it. But, I mean, do you pursue these vehicles and just say, if they plow into a car and kill 5 people, well, that's, then they're going to jail for the rest of their lives. Or, they plow into a business and, close down a business that was doing nothing wrong because they're trying to evade the police. or roll up into someone's house and do a 180 flip into someone's their living room, for goodness sakes. There's obviously a lot of danger there. And most of the time, the police officers are very good at stopping these guys. And this is not the police officers. These are the people that are stealing the cars. These are the people that are running away. That are treating this like it's a freaking video game and not realizing they could be killing people. That is the problem. But how many times do we allow someone to try this? I mean, in the case of Goodman here, we clearly are not going to allow him back out on the street now until his trial, and I'm going to guess he's going to jail for a long time. Hopefully so. And throw every charge at him. When he throws the dog out of the truck, for goodness sakes. For goodness sakes, I mean, every charge you can level at this guy, throw it at him. But the question is would he have committed the second round of incidences if the police would have stayed with him on when he carjacked the second one and sped away there? It's an interesting thought process. And like I said, I don't know if it's necessarily right. I will say this. We have to hold people accountable more often than we do. I'll explain that in a second. 952-946-6205. 952-946-6205. It's the Matt McNeil Show right here on AM 950.
The Senior Linkage Line is a free statewide service of the Minnesota Board on Aging, helping older Minnesotans and caregivers find answers and connect to services and supports. Questions about Medicare, transportation, looking to move to senior housing, overwhelmed with prescription drug plans? Call the Senior Linkage Line at 800-333-2433 or visit trellisconnects.org, where we help people optimize well-being as they age. That's trellisconnects.org.
Hi, Matt McNeil here. On December 8th, I was driving home in my Toyota Sienna from Rudy Luther Toyota. At a traffic light, a car slammed into me. Without a doubt in my mind, if I hadn't been driving a Sienna, I wouldn't be here right now. The car is designed to take a wallop and keep the people inside safe, as it did for me. It's one thing to hear someone talk about safety standards. It's another to become an example of the safety standards. The Toyota saved my life, and I will always own one. If you want real safety, visit Rudy Luther Toyota. Rudy Luther Toyota, the corner of 394 and 169 in Golden Valley.
Tune in this Saturday morning right here on AM 950 for the Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show from 7 to 8 a.m. We'll be discussing plants you can put in your garden right away, as well as ones you want to avoid buying at your local garden center. Our guest is garden columnist Teresa Forte, and we'll answer your garden questions. That's all this Saturday morning from 7 to 8 a.m. right here on AM 950. Tell a friend and let's grow together.
Do you believe in ghosts? Ever wondered if aliens from other planets visit the Earth? Have you ever thought about whether Bigfoot is real? My name is Greg Bakken, and on my new show, Ghostbox Radio, we'll have these conversations about the paranormal, ufology, Bigfoot, or just the unusual, bringing together guests who are experts in these fields. Join me every Sunday at 4 p.m. for Ghostbox Radio with Greg Bakken on AM 950, even if you're a skeptic.
If people are watching on the live stream, hello, it's TV for your radio. A lot of people commenting on the comments about the individual at my medical visit, basically trying to convert me to something. I'm not quite sure. If I would have been more than stunned, I would have been mad, said Marla. It would have been pointed out that this was inappropriate for a medical visit. I couldn't agree more. And maybe I'm part of the problem here because I should have said, whoa, what are you doing? Are you wanting this place to get sued? Stop. Don't talk about that stuff. But like I said, it was interesting to see where she was going, because it's like, it's like, oh, are you Christian? Yes. All right. We're done talking then, aren't we? All right. Nope. It's time for you to put the hard sell on. Oh boy. All right. I want to be careful here. We have to hold people accountable. Now, I'm not going to deny we have got a problem and a racism problem within our legal and prison system, undeniably. I do not think, I mean, the whole idea of locking people up for life just to make it seem like you're tough on crime, that's just ludicrous. It is wasteful. It is non-productive in any capacity outside of trying to give you bullet points that can be sold to a whites only crowd. Let's just be honest about it. I think we do need to look at sentencing recommendations. We need to look at the way that people are prosecuted. I mean, the Stallings case, if anything, the Stallings case shows you the flaws within the system. I think we all agree that there are definitely some problems there. Once again, the solution is not to run to the other side, the other extreme. It's not. The other side is not we're not going to have any parole. We're going to have a meditative drum circle. They're going to feel really, really sorry at the end of this. Too many people fall in love with the diamond in the rough story, and they want to forget there is a crap load of rough. Sure, there's a few diamonds in there, but there's a crap load of rough, and you have to acknowledge that. I don't think that someone, even in this case, even in Goodman's case, if found guilty, should be locked up for life. Should be locked up for a few years? Undoubtedly. Undoubtedly. The kids that drove that car off the overpass and almost landed on I-95 after they had carjacked the car and were evading police. Should they go to jail? Yes, they should. Yes. Because their crime, if they would have hit somebody, if they would have landed on a car on the highway, yes, you can't just put them into juvie hall and wag your finger at them. You got to give them at least 6-7 months in prison, maybe a year. You got to have some level of punishment that's not forever, but is also not non-existent. Because right now, the unwillingness to basically say, all right, okay, we can't do things like we used to do, but we still need to, if you've stolen a car, you need to go to jail for grand theft auto, a major crime. And I don't want to necessarily get into too many details about why I'm so passionate about this right now. But I'll say this, that there's a lot of crimes that happen out there where it's almost as if on one side you've got these far-right zealots who will scream, lock him up for life. On the other side, you have they just need a cuddle puppy. And I'm like, okay, no, neither one of those solutions is working. That if someone was to steal a car, pull a gun on someone, try to evade police, nearly kill someone on the highway, or have a DWI and hit another car, maybe they should have some sort of level of punishment for that. As opposed to, well, they've said they're really sorry, so good enough. Hour 2, that's coming up next.
Hi, this is Paul Metz. Thanks for listening to the Wall of Power Radio Hour for the last 5 years on AM 950. We air every Saturday night at 6 p.m. We have artists, musicians, private detectives, politicians, and more. On AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
Is your remote workforce putting your company at risk? Cyber criminals are targeting your employees with COVID-19 inspired emails and attacking businesses like yours. Hi, Mark Sommerfeld from Rymark. Rymark has the tools and expertise to enable your employees to work securely from home. If you need help getting your staff to work remotely and securely, call 651-328-8900 or go to rymarkit.com. That's 651-328-8900 or rymarkit.com.
Hey, Minnesota, it's your favorite sexy liberal. Join me and my fellow cohorts in liberal justice weekdays from 8 to 11 on AM 950 KTNF, St. Louis Park, Minneapolis, St. Paul, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
AP News. I'm Ed Donahue. As he prepares to unveil his budget plan, there are signals President Biden views this as more than just about finances. The AP's Sagar Meghani is at the White House.
Thursday's rollout will be in part about political messaging. The president will do it outside the White House.
He'll just happen to be doing it in Pennsylvania.
A state spokeswoman, Karine Jean-Pierre, says he is close to the president's heart, without mentioning it's a must-win state in next year's election. The president's hinting of what's to come in Philadelphia, like proposing a tax targeting billionaires, which he says will help create a fair tax system.
No billionaire should be paying a lower tax rate than a firefighter.
Each party's jockeying to show it's the more fiscally responsible. The president's calling for trimming deficits by a combined $2 trillion over 10 years. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy wants the nation on a path to a balanced budget, but has not said how the GOP would do that. Sagar Meghani, Washington.
People in Southern California mountain towns have continued to struggle to dig out and get necessities in the aftermath of a blizzard that dumped so much snow that roads became impassable and roofs collapsed. Eddie Loya can't get to his home.
I've never seen anything like this, so it's horrible, and I'm just trying to get some snow off my roof before it caves in.
Meantime, more snow is expected this week in the Sierra Nevadas in Northern California. A man has been charged with blowing up 2 Pacific Gas and Electric transformers, causing blasts that knocked out power to thousands of utility customers in the San Francisco Bay Area. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is vowing not to retreat from Bakhmut as Russian forces move ahead on the devastated eastern city they have tried to capture for 6 months. A mixed showing at the close on Wall Street. The Dow finished up 40 points. This is AP News.
Here's a message just for the attorneys out there. So you passed the bar, joined a firm, or even built your own. Now are you finding out that you're doing more administration than actual law practice? Lexicon can help. Lexicon is a legal technology provider with over a decade of experience streamlining administrative tasks like timekeeping, billing, and more, so you can focus on maximizing billable hours and increasing client satisfaction. Call 855-4-LEXICON or visit lexiconservices.com/go to learn more.
Be more CyberZen. Get NordVPN. With a few simple clicks, NordVPN will block online trackers, secure your devices from malware-infected downloads, and block access to malicious websites. With NordVPN, enjoy internet without trackers, without malicious websites, without malware-ridden files. Be more CyberZen. Catch the special deal now at nordvpn.com.
SeniorCommunities.guide is your free online website to find housing, care, and resources for seniors in Minnesota. Use the powerful, award-winning search tool to quickly improve your search. You will have all the information you need to contact providers directly without any hassle. Start your search now at SeniorCommunities.guide and follow us on Facebook for interesting articles, helpful advice, and how older adults are changing the world.
SeniorCommunities.guide. Winter is here, and there's a good chance your home isn't being heated efficiently. And it's likely because of air sealing and insulation problems. Inadequate attic insulation is the leading contributor to high energy bills, cold rooms, and ice dams. Great news, the energy-efficient pros at Snap Construction can fix it all. Stop the heat from leaking out and save. Call 612-333-SNAP or visit snapconstruction.com for your free infrared energy inspection. Install with Snap Construction and qualify for over $750 in rebates and incentives. State and city programs are now offering 0% financing for qualifying insulation upgrades. So call Snap Construction for your free insulation energy consultation and start saving on your energy bills. Call 612-333-SNAP. That's 612-333-SNAP. Or visit snapconstruction.com. Snap Construction is arguably the most well-reviewed insulation and exterior contractor in the metro area. Visit snapconstruction.com.
With a look at your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. A chance of drizzle this afternoon with a high of 37, then cloudy tonight with a low of 25. Latunji's Palette is a social enterprise business built with purpose and fortified with love. Discover the best peach cobbler in the world at Latunji's Palette, 1400 Park Avenue South in Minneapolis. Visit the website at latunjispalette.com. Portions of the following program may be pre-recorded.
Hour number 2 of the show on your Monday. Good to be with you. Matt and Patrick, it's the Matt McNeil Show. I'm going to be geeky. I mean, this is going to be geeky because I'm a geek and I'm a fan. Dara Moskowitz Grumdahl is one of the most awarded food writers in the country. She came to Minnesota for college, became a local restaurant, wine, and drink critic in 1997. Now with Minneapolis St. Paul Magazine, Dara is the other half of our star food and dining team, along with Stephanie March. Dara has been nominated for her food and wine writing 13 times for a James Beard Awards. Has won 5 times. I did get an AARP card this year, so I guess it's equal. Yeah, there it is. She's kind enough to join us to talk about an exceptional article she has written. What is Northern food? Dara, thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you for having me. And it is 15 times.
15 times? They have not. They did not update your bio on MSP.
You should ask me for one instead of just scooping one off the website.
Well, congratulations on that. Wait, you are a fantastic writer.
Oh, thank you.
And you and I could talk food, and we're going to talk food for quite a bit here. But let's start with this article because you stumbled across something which I find to be fascinating because there's always there's Southern food, and we, you go down to the South and barbecue and jambalaya and biscuits and gravy and the seafood that you can kind of get. A lot of places have a distinctive kind of food, and the North really, it has some things which I think are kind of iconic for the area, but it doesn't necessarily have this. So you asked what is Northern food, and then you kind of stumbled upon something which I think is a brilliant observation of what makes up Northern cuisine.
Yes, I did. And, I should backtrack and say, not only have I been thinking about, what is Southern food? What is Northern food? I have been working on this since literally maybe 1997, sort of. So I grew up in New York City. I came out to Minnesota, and now I've been here an awfully long time. And the whole time, people are very self-deprecating. How many times have you heard the whole like ketchup is a spice, or or they're very oblivious. Like how many times have you kind of heard that like mashed potatoes or pie, like that's not anything that's special, or wild rice soup is just something that's just kind of like here, like nobody cares. But not only is Southern food have this, very distinct ingredients and, things that make it Southern food, thinking about pecans, thinking about crawdads. And not only is it that, but like identity of these cities is inextricable with their food. So that's always just been a mystery. You go to Memphis, you get barbecue. I could just go through, what do you get when you go to New Orleans? I bet you know the exact right things, just like everybody does. So I'll put it to you. What do you go when you get to New Orleans?
When I get to New Orleans, I'll go on down there and I will get some gumbo. I usually like a good po' boy. And, I like some of the soups that you can get down there, especially the seafood soups, because they're just, they're generally fresh and they're made with that very kind of that French lineage, that they put into that, that are delicious. I love going to the southeastern over to South Carolina where the Gullah community is at, and the oysters are there and the barbecue.
And also what's there is rice. And why is
yeah.
there rice? Because it grows in, kind of swampy coastal areas. That's what rice likes. Just like our wild rice likes to live in streams and lakes, the rice that you get in jambalaya likes to live in water also. That's what it does.
Well, it is interesting you bring this up, because I think one of the things when I think about Southern food, I was in Savannah, and one of the things you go to the mansions that are still there. One of the things that you see is the mentality there. Now, granted, Savannah is a little like New Orleans. It's its own unique little thing, where the white, powerful elite were trying to eat like Europeans. The cultural food that exploded out of the South
I'd
came
fight
from
you on that one, but
what's that?
I would fight you on that, but keep going.
Well, because we were going there and they were always trying to, there was an attempt to try to make it, especially with Savannah and the way they try to design it as, European style. But I think that
what part of Europe?
I think they were kind of trying to do a little more like the French, kind of trying to show it was kind of more established. You've been to Savannah, so you see all the parks and the squares and the design of the city. And when you've gone to, we've gone to some of the mansions there, and they talk about how when they did these, especially the parties, that the mentality was to show that we can do just as ornate feast as anyone can. A little bit of inferiority complex to the north for sure, especially New York City, but as well, it seemed like they were trying to, especially when they were entertaining, European dignitaries, they were trying to do French style or European style meals down there. That's what, at least in the tours that we were taking there, I mean, and that's what they were telling us, that that was kind of the real temple. The wealthy white were basically doing a lot to try to imitate European style there. As when you look at collard greens and barbecue and the things like this, it was coming from, a lot of that came from the culture of the working class, the slave culture as well, that the foods that originated from them, which in a lot of places have become the foods a lot of areas are known for.
Right, because that's who was doing the cooking and
Yes.
the planting and the gardening and everything else. So I don't know what they were telling you in a plantation house in Savannah, but in that kind of slave culture of Savannah, they were basically navigating two populations. So that would have been the Native American population, the people that knew how to get sassafras out of the swamps, the people that knew how to grow corn, which of course is a northern Native American, thing, like from the Aztecs, the Mayas up into Ontario. This was the land of corn. So you're thinking about cornbread. That's a, Native American food. There's no cornbread happening in France, no matter what they have to say in a plantation home in Georgia. And then, so the other population that you're looking at, of course, are enslaved Africans who brought over a whole bunch of foods with them, tucked into their hair and any other way that they could preserve their culture and provide for themselves and their children in this land that they were being shanghaied and driven across the sea against their will towards. So that's okra, that's pumpkins, that's all of the things that you're thinking about something, a dish like succotash, a dish like calabash, like those things are. Succotash is a Native American, African American hybrid food, and if they had airs of being French, like I don't even know what to say, but
Well, the white population, not necessarily the African American population, but no, I think that there is, especially
well, who was doing the cooking, so if you look at a city like New Orleans, that was an actual place that was owned by Napoleon Bonaparte up until the Louisiana Purchase. So a lot of French culture was in cities like Louisiana, but and certainly the Thomas Jeffersons of the world, very attached to France, going back and forth. And, he had a elaborate wine cellar that he was constantly stocking. It was a big preoccupation of his. So there were connections of France, but, those things that we think of as Southern food, I don't think have really anything to do with France at all.
Well, no, and I agree with you. I was not saying that as that's where it came from. I was saying that was kind of the airs that the white culture was putting on, but the foods that are known for the Southern culture did not come from that. Came from something else. And so forgive me if that came across wrong. You and I are saying the same exact thing, I think, at this
Oh,
point.
okay, great.
So-
Yeah, so Southern food is like a very distinct thing. And as long as I've been in Minnesota and writing about food, which has been this whole time, there's a kind of a hole where Northern food would be, a kind of identity, a lack of identity, certainly a lack of pride, but then also just a lack of agreement. Like we can say, you go south and you have gumbo, you have jambalaya, you have po' boys. You just said all the things, like, what they are. Everybody knows what they are, but we don't have that agreement with Northern food. And I can, a couple of years ago, I did a big story on the beef commercial sandwich. Did you ever read that one?
No, I did not.
Okay, so the beef commercial sandwich was one of my things that I kind of excavated about Northern food. So that is just basically a roast beef sandwich with, mashed potatoes is the base, sliced roast beef, and then gravy, like homemade gravy up over the top, and it's wonderful. And there's a couple places around that still do it, but I talked to some old timers, and everybody had the exact same thing to say about it. It was like a beef commercial sandwich was what you ate when you went into town with your harvest, or what you ate when you were a traveling salesman and you had one meal that you ate in a day while you were traveling. And it's the kind of thing that was very, I want to say, preyed upon by our local wonderful food companies. Like, so they, gravy packets, like they just destroyed our gravy culture in a generation. And so nobody really knows how to make gravy very well. And everyone thinks you make it from packets. And that's, one example of a Northern food that we used to have that is kind of vanished. And so then this news story, I decided to take to swig at it and be like, well, what if we were going to define it? It's not going to be the food that only grows within 150 miles of, your house. Like, that's not Northern food, because if that was the true, then Memphis and New Orleans wouldn't have a Southern food culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of started just like knocking back to the most obvious thing of all. Like, what's the most obvious thing about living here?
It's winter. It is absolutely. It's the changing of the seasons. Is the fact that we have very definitive and defined seasons.
Yeah, it's the cold, it's the snow.
Yeah.
Like, anytime you go anywhere, everyone knows how this is. You go anywhere, you go to California and people are like, "Oh, how do you stand it? Why do you live there?" Like, right? You go to New York and people are like, "Oh, I couldn't take it. That wouldn't work for me." And it's just, extremely annoying as someone who loves to live. I love the snow. We have a beautiful snowfall. I can't wait to get outside. My dog and I, like, we love the snow. We love to go walking on it. Like, how many pictures of snow do I have on my camera phone? Probably 1 million. But it's like the defining thing about living here. And so I started thinking, like, well, what if Northern food is the thing that comes from land with serious snow? And then I just started talking to everybody in food about this, and it started to make more and more sense. And it's one of those things where once you kind of figure it out, you're like, adoy, that is the most obvious thing. Like, it's the food that comes from winter. And then I started kind of digging in and finding that, oh, guess what? Snow, cold, this absolute hard stop to fertile processes that that we all know comes down in October, maybe early November, someplace like that, starts up again late March. That gap when everything is not decaying is incredibly fertile. Like, that's why we have this riot, crazy, abundant spring. It's because there's all of this soil fertility that just gets trapped when it gets cold.
Mm-hmm. It is an excellent point, because as a person whose family's from Minnesota, who's grown up here, who, they'd pick dandelion leaves the second they would come out of the ground in the spring, pick high bush cranberries, wild rice, which was, it was funny because I remember when I went to someplace else in the country and they said, here's wild rice. And like, that's not wild rice. So I don't know what you're giving me, but that's not wild rice. And as you talk about in your article about apples, I mean, is there anything greater, I think, than picking an apple off a tree in Minnesota when it's been naturally chilled with the air and taking a bite out of it? It is absolutely delicious. It's because the winter sets up all these foods to where it's not just it just they can't exist elsewhere without Minnesota and the winter that creates it.
Yeah, it's something that you kind of know in the back of your mind, but you don't think about what's the meaning of it. Like, why is there no apples growing in Florida? And, yeah, there are a couple of hybrids and stuff, but, not meaningfully. Why do all the apples come from Michigan, Seattle, Minnesota, Wisconsin? The reason is that apples need cold, and the really good apples really need cold. And then it kind of goes like that with a bunch of stuff. Like, we all know that in Sweden and Norway, they like rye bread. Like in Minnesota, rye grows really well. Well, guess what? It's not just that winter rye, they call it winter rye, it needs winter. Winter rye grows well here, but winter rye cannot grow in New Orleans. They're never going to have rye bread the way we have. Like, it's just not possible. And then it's like, that is a really delicious food that takes all of this energy and abundance from the winter, from the super long days of June. Like, they don't have those long days in New Orleans either. And so you can kind of start putting together a list of foods that need the winter and are awesome because of the winter. Apples and rye, I think, are perfect examples.
And that's one of the things you do is you break down, you talk about a few different foods in this article and how the winter helps them, whether it's rye. And I think you were up for the rye part of the story. It was very northwestern part of the state, right?
Oh, yeah. All the way Halleck, Minnesota, far north, Rockner Rye whiskey, one of my absolute favorite tipples. Yeah, they're practically in North Dakota and they're practically in Canada, and it's perfect rye country.
And that as well, though, and talk a little bit about cheese, because I thought that was fascinating. How is the winter mold the cheese here in Minnesota?
We have a small but mighty cheese scene here. So there's a couple of great ones. There's Redhead Creamery here in Minnesota. There's Shepherd's Way down in Nerstrand, Minnesota. And there's a couple things to think about. It's like the sheep's milk cheeses of Shepherd's Way. Well, it's like, what are sheep doing? Like, they're having these gigantic woolly coats. Like, why? Why do sheep need gigantic woolly coats? Is it for bikinis? Like, is it for swimming? Is it for their exciting life poolside? Like, no. Sheep need giant woolly coats because they live in cold places, right? They climb up mountains. They do stuff outside where it's cold. And what do you need to do when you're outside where it's cold and you have a baby? You have to give them really rich milk. Like that, this intuitively makes sense, right? If I told you, like, oh, you're taking your baby camping and you're going to be at the top of the Rockies, you'd be like, whoa, I got to get some high energy foods, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where the milk kind of comes from for our great Minnesota cheeses. These animals that live outdoors, sheep particularly, they make a really concentrated, intense, rich milk, and that's what makes the cheese so great. And if there were living, if you took the Shepherd's Way herd of sheep, who I will add, like, they just live outside all year round. They keep these are farmers that keep the dairy barn door kind of propped to a lower level so the sheep can come and go. It's like a garage door that goes up and down, and they keep it, kind of half propped so that the sheep can just do what they want. It's like, and if it's nice out, if it's 20 degrees and sunny, if it's 10 degrees and sunny, the sheep are outside doing their thing. They only really come inside if it's raining. Apparently they don't like the rain. But those sheep are eating the very abundant stuff that's growing outside, and then they're coming inside. And guess what? The molds that just happen to be floating through the air, just like we have molds floating through the air everywhere. The ones that are on the Shepherd's Way farm are what make the Shepherd's Way cheese. And so if you just picked up the Shepherd's Way sheep and you drove them to Tampa Bay, they wouldn't be making the milk that they make. They wouldn't be eating the delightful pasture that they eat, and they wouldn't be making the cheese that they make. And so it's like, that's a food that needs all the snow that we have, all of the liquid that, that makes all the plants grow.
Well, and this what your point is does remind me a lot of my family, and that because there's just a basicness to it. It's just what you're describing are kind of base foods that are just out there. But as you described, they're delicious apples and rye bread. Good rye bread. My God, is that great? And the carrots and the cheese and the stuff that's in your article. But like I said, my parents, I remember when dandelions would come up, the first greens and the asparagus would come in, and they would go and get those in the ramps. And then they'd go get the fish from the lake, and they'd go get and the wild rice, and they'd go get this. In fall they'd go get the ducks and the deer, maybe even if they're out in the western part of the state, some pheasant. And they would have these things, and they're just base things, but they are there because Minnesota's Minnesota.
Yes.
And because of all of that, it's not, you're not making some sort of 40 ingredient recipe. It's just the base stuff. But that's what Minnesota and northern cuisine, as your article says, what is northern food. That's what it is. It's just these great base ingredients, which individually can stand on their own, work sometimes when you combine them with other things, but they're just things that, as like I said, people used to pull, my family just pull carrots out of the garden. There you go. You're having a carrot. It's nothing. It doesn't necessarily have to be fancy to be a great example of what the food of the area is.
Absolutely. And every single thing that you just listed, I could talk about for 1 hour. I mean, walleye are a perfect northern food. And if we were near Paris, walleye would be the greatest delicacy in the French kitchens. But because they're far away from us, they don't, there isn't this fancy cuisine built up around them. And I would say also that, these elemental foods, so venison, oh, how I love it, pheasant, grouse, pheasant is the food of kings, like that's what Louis XIV would be eating every day if he could have. Pheasants are the greatest thing. Venison, they're all of England and Scotland was sort of riddled with rules about how all the deer belonged to the nobility and the peasants couldn't have them, and this, that, and the other thing, because that stuff is delicious and everyone wants it, and there's a lot of prestige there. But those things that we think of as like French food, German food, these fancy foods, they really rely on those extremely basic ingredients. So like a really good duck, simply roasted, is like, there's nothing better. A pheasant just dressed with salt and pepper and roasted over wood, like there is nothing better. That's a cuisine. And we can kind of start zeroing in on these things. Like duck, I feel like if I had room in that story to talk more about how wonderful duck is, wild duck, farmyard duck, all Minnesota duck is so great because it gets that insanely fatty layer because the ducks are getting ready for winter.
Well, how about corn? And in your point about the north is so good because, trees as you go further north don't grow as other things because they have to deal with that winter. And it just seems like the corn you get in Minnesota is this sharp, you bite into it as an ear of boiled corn and it just pops because it's so tight. I don't know if that's, obviously we do have the warm summers, but the kernels are so tight and delicious and sweet. And it is something that, and hey, I've had great corn in Iowa. I don't think it's as good as the corn you get in Minnesota. It seems like the further north you go, the more delicate it gets and the more delicious it gets.
All right. So two things that come to mind. One is that I think that if you are experiencing the greatness of sweet corn in Minnesota, thank a really skilled farmer. And the
Yes.
farmers of Minnesota know how to do this for generations and are better at it. But we have something called, I'm going to bring in a wine term. Have you ever heard the phrase hang time? So hang time is the amount of time that a wine grape spends just like hanging out in the sunshine. And people say, like it's a truism in wine, that the longer daylight you have, the more hang time you have, the sweeter, the more developed flavors you get in the stuff that's hanging out there. So that's why Oregon Pinot Noir is so wonderful and expensive. And that's why the French wine regions that are the most expensive are those northern French regions. Bordeaux is basically driving distance to the Netherlands. It's up on the northern part of everything. And so because it has longer daylight, those longer days. I mean, think about what a Minnesota June, a Minnesota July, how long those days are. It's light till what time? 10 o'clock at night most of the time.
9:30. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And so that's, think about the perspective of you're an ear of corn, right? So you're standing out in the field. The sun comes up at 6:30. It's still going at 9:30. You're just sitting out there developing all of your delicious flavor flavonoids and stuff.
We got to take a break, but when I come back, I want to actually talk about something you repeatedly say in this. This is not a story about climate change, but you do bring up the point that if we start losing this winter, do we start losing the identity? And I want to talk a little bit about that. And then also talk a little bit about, as you talk about skilled farmers, we do have a lot to thank for the skilled farmers, because I think the way that agriculture has changed too has dramatically, there is a danger there too of us losing those crops, which are kind of what we're known for because of mass production. I'll talk a little bit about that when we do come back. Dara Moskowitz Grumdahl, now you know why I'm a fan of hers. She's brilliant. From MSP Magazine, Minneapolis St. Paul Magazine, talking about her article, What is Northern Food? We'll take a break. Come on back. It's the Matt McNeil Show right here on AM 950.
Are you remote workers putting your company at risk? Not sure what steps to take to secure your data? Hi, Mark Sommerfeld from Rymark. The Rymark team is guiding our clients through these difficult times. In fact, demand has been so high, we created an easy-to-follow guide with the 5 steps to securely work from home. It's yours free. Download our 5 steps to securely work from home now at rymarkit.com or call 651-328-8900 for a no-cost how-to discussion.
Hey, it's Patrick. Improve your air quality and health because Zero Res is the only choice for a true clean that lasts longer. 1 in 5 Americans suffer from poor air quality in their home and or their office. HVAC systems carry harmful particulates and promote asthma, hay fever, and allergy symptoms. A clean HVAC system promotes a healthier indoor environment, which contributes to productivity, comfort, and a sense of health and well-being. Zero Res uses the most technologically advanced duct cleaning process available. The best part? We can install an air purification and filtration system on the same day. Instead of letting these pollutants linger, get your air duct Zero Resified. This month, get 3 rooms Zero Resified from the Twin Cities' #1 carpet cleaner starting at just $129 and take $75 off your air duct cleaning. Call Zero Res right now, 952-ZERO-RES, or go to ZeroResMinnesota.com and ask for the AM 950 special. Zero Res.
There really is no place like home. Hi, I'm Mary T. of Mary T. Home Health. When you're faced with an illness or an injury, being able to stay at home and receive care is important. Our home health offers a wide range of services, including skilled nursing, physical, occupational, and speech therapies, aides, homemakers, in-home respite care, and 24/7 live-in care. We'll work closely with your primary care provider to come up with an individualized plan for you. Learn more today at marytinc.com.
Hi, I'm Rachel Shamblatt. My dad is Dr. Scott Shamblatt from Shamblatt Family Dentistry. A lot of people are afraid of the dentist, but you don't have to be. My dad makes going to the dentist comfortable and even fun. He won't be mad if you haven't seen a dentist in a long time. He just wants to take care of you and your teeth. If you don't see my dad, please see another dentist. Take care of your teeth because they're the only ones you get.
Shamblatt Family Dentistry in Hopkins and St. Paul. Find them online at shamblattfamilydentistry.com or call 1-800-FIX-MY-TEETH.
Hey, John, I heard you're turning 65 this year. Time to start comparing your Medicare insurance options.
I'm so overwhelmed with all the different Medicare companies and plan designs. I don't even know where to begin.
Really? I worked with CompareYourMedicare.com, and they made my Medicare decisions seem easy.
Oh, really? Well, what do they do?
CompareYourMedicare.com represents several of the top Medicare insurance companies in Minnesota. A local licensed agent will help you compare Medicare plans to determine which products best meet your needs and budget.
Hi, this is Jared with CompareYourMedicare.com. We're a local small business that prides itself in helping our community with their Medicare needs. Medicare is complex, but it doesn't have to be. Whether you're planning to retire early or work past Medicare eligibility at age 65, give us a call. We can guide you through how and when to apply for Medicare. Go to CompareYourMedicare.com or call 952-465-0074 to schedule a consultation. CompareYourMedicare.com is part of the Minnesota Health Insurance Network of agents.
Winter is here, and there's a good chance your home isn't being heated efficiently. And it's likely because of air sealing and insulation problems. Inadequate attic insulation is the leading contributor to high energy bills, cold rooms, and ice dams. Great news, the energy-efficient pros at Snap Construction can fix it all. Stop the heat from leaking out and save. Call 612-333-SNAP or visit snapconstruction.com for your free infrared energy inspection. Install with Snap Construction and qualify for over $750 in rebates and incentives. State and city programs are now offering 0% financing for qualifying insulation upgrades. So call Snap Construction for your free insulation energy consultation and start saving on your energy bills. Call 612-333-SNAP. That's 612-333-SNAP. Or visit snapconstruction.com. Snap Construction is arguably the most well-reviewed insulation and exterior contractor in the metro area. Visit snapconstruction.com.
With a look at your AM 950 weather, I'm Patrick Lilia. A chance of drizzle this afternoon with a high of 37, then cloudy tonight with a low of 25. Bring your friends and family to the Minnesota Capitol for ERA Capital Action Day on Wednesday, March 8th. Let's send a message that equality has no qualifiers. More at eramn.org.
AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, the Matt McNeil Show. Dara Moskowitz Grumdahl is kind enough to join us from Minneapolis St. Paul Magazine, one of the great food writers over there, talking about her fantastic article, What is Northern Food? And Dara, one of the things that you repeatedly say here in this article is that you're not here to, basically write about climate change. But you do put out a big warning flag that if winter is to change here, if we are to have less winter, are we damaging the cuisine of the North? Are we damaging the northern foods that we all love because they need that long winter to basically, be created in the right way?
There, I think you might have muted yourself.
What a cell phone. All right, apologies. This is something, I guess it was a metaphor because I don't know how to talk about this very well. It is, it's a tragedy that we are sleepwalking into, and I'm not sure that we in Minnesota have an ability to control it. But, here's some of the things that are happening. Walleye need ice, they need cold water. That's what they require. We now have 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks less of ice than we had, a couple of years ago. And we all know, not a couple of years ago, your grandparents 50 years ago, we have 2 weeks less ice than they had. And we all see it happening around us. We didn't have so many ice houses crashing through the ice. We didn't have so many winter events, kind of fragile and canceled. Like, we know this is happening. Maple syrup, it comes because you have sub-zero nights and above freezing days. A lot of the invasive pests that we have are able to live here because we don't have what we used to have, which is a couple of, minus 50-degree days in the winter. Old timers will tell you there used to be a couple of days every year where it would be minus 50 during the day in January. Without that, we have these invasive pests that are able to survive the same way that they could in, I don't know, Oklahoma, something like that. So we are changing. It's not my whole lifetime. People just want to fight about whether it's happening or not, and I don't. I kind of maybe aged out of that. I find it so counterproductive. I feel like a lot of times with climate change, we're all a bunch of people standing around a hospital bed of a beloved, parent or something. And there's always like, if you have a dozen kids, then one of them's like, everything's going to be fine. Like, and then they get mad at you for saying like, nope, we got a worse diagnosis than that. And, so we're just always in these different stages of like anger and denial and grief. And some of this, we can't do anything about, unless China gets on board and stops burning coal. Like, we're kind of being shoved down this road that we don't have any choice about. With all of that, which is a horrible thing to say and experience, and I, will always say, like, I was born in the year 1970, and we had twice as many birds in North America the day that I was born as we have now. Like, we're experiencing a bird holocaust, and we're just kind of oblivious, and that some birds are doing better than others. And those are basically the ones that we eat. Like, God bless turkey hunters. God bless Ducks Unlimited. God bless Pheasants Unlimited. They have done more to preserve birds in our time than anybody. And I do mean anybody. Like, every hippie in the world has not done what Pheasants Unlimited has done.
No, and you're exactly right. And they're the ones that have been kind of sending out the warnings that when they keep track of these birds, and they were some of the earliest groups that were saying these numbers are dropping way too fast.
Yeah, they are dropping way too fast. And it's, everybody in the world is like, wants to fight about trans rights or whatever. And like, God bless anybody who has gender dysphoria and how they deal with it or whatever. But it's like, what's the real crisis is that we are taking our inheritance, which was, outlined in Genesis and everywhere else, like everything that we inherited, and we are just spending it. We are spending all the chickadees. We are spending all the cardinals. Like, who is going to pay attention? Okay. So that's like super hard to talk about. No one wants to talk about. You want to talk about pie. You want to talk about apples. Well, here's a thing. Here's how trees work. Trees need bioavailable nitrogen, right? Bioavailable nitrogen comes largely in the forest from bird poop. Like, that's, you go to the hardware store, you buy a big bag of guano, like, that's the good stuff. That's what plants want. Well, that's what trees want too. And they want it from the birds that they evolved with, And so it's like our great northern forests are, producing all the oxygen that we need to breathe. Like, this is a thing that I never can get anybody to take seriously. If you're breathing right now, thank 4 trees, So it's like, it's a serious thing. Like,
and if I can maybe step in, welcome to Matt's doom and gloom to our experience every day. We talk about this all the time. And I mean, I've talked about the fact that in my lifetime, I'm 68. I was born in 68. The moose, there are hardly any moose left up in northern Minnesota. Those have disappeared. They used to hunt for moose all the time. As a matter of fact, there's on our cabin from like 1930, there's a moose there that was just right off the cabin, is there, but we haven't seen a moose there 40 years, 50 years. High bush cranberry. My dad used to take us out to these bogs in northern Minnesota and say, go in there and go pick the high bush cranberries. Just a delightful experience as a kid. I was not scarred. Needless to say, there are a lot of places where the high bush cranberries, they're just not there anymore. They're gone. And these are changing. This is changing in front of our eyes. And yet it's kind of one of those things that there is an intentional blithe ignorance about the whole thing. But at the same time, it is, as your article points out, if this changes much more, the consequences to what we've got here, we're going to lose our identity.
We're going to lose our identity, and we should value what we have right now, like really value it. I feel like we have a culture of not appreciating what's around us until we get kicked out of the Garden of Eden, right? And this is the Garden of Eden, and maybe more like what you were born into with the high bush cranberries was the Garden of Eden. But it's like we need to have some kind. I always say that I am the true conservative because I would like to conserve some of these things so that we have them. And I will say, if anybody who feels like this is Matt's doom and gloom hour, and now Dara's a doom pixie with the on the side here. It doesn't. The most important thing that I've learned over the last 5 years was by reading Jane Goodall's book Hope, and she just goes over like nature will bounce back if you let it. Like for old growth forests, like we don't have them, but we can just move the line out 5 feet and then move it out 5 feet again. And eventually that will be old growth forest. The bison will come back if you give them space to do it. The prairie chickens will come back if we give them space to come back. I mean, so it's like nature is its own self-replicating, beautiful, magical, amazing thing. And if we get our act together, it will come back from whatever little space that we give it. You know how it is. You clear a little black area in the yard, and then, stuff starts growing in it. That's nature.
Mm-hmm. And I look at it from I've got 3 kids. I want them to, and I want to have grandkids, hopefully someday. I want there to be a world for them to enjoy that's somewhat similar to here without us, people begging us to pump water out of the Lake Superior and stuff like that. I mean, we can go down that whole path.
I hate that whole thing. It's so evil.
Why are you in the desert? You're in the desert. Didn't you see when you didn't see any trees? Was your first clue? All right.
And you're trying to have a golf course. I'm sorry that you idolize Scotland and you live in Phoenix. Just stop. Get your head in a more reasonable place.
Exactly. So one thing I want to ask you about is that, I mean, I think one of the things that you kind of allude to this, and you don't talk about this necessarily within the article, but the way that we've changed agriculture dramatically, especially over the last 40 years, and the way that we will take a crop that is used in whether ethanol or just mass produced chips or something like this, and it can become a cash cow crop that they basically can genetically alter so it grows better in Minnesota, and so all of a sudden it becomes the more desired crop, or a wheat crop like this. Do you feel as if part of the Minnesota food identity has been lost because we don't have nearly as many kind of unique farmers that would, have a much more robust and diverse growing, product, that the amount of food that we're growing is getting more and more narrowed outside of these kind of specialized farmers?
Great question. I could talk about this also for another 2 hours. So I think there's a couple of crises happening. One of them is that we should not be letting hedge funds buy farmland. I think that this is a absolute crisis in the countryside. Like we need to have young farmers able to buy farms. Every young farmer that can't buy a farm is a black mark against the state of Minnesota. Like we need to be creating spaces for people to live in rural areas and be farmers and care for the land. Like the fact that, these hedge funds are buying up land and then they want, it plowed edge to edge. Like this is bad. This is bad for the planet. It's bad for our food culture. It's bad for the birds. It's bad for our children. It will be bad for our health, like across the board. We should stop that right now. Okay, so that's, I just my adrenaline now is just pumping because it makes me so afraid, and we are just sleepwalking into this disaster. Okay, so that's one thing. But another problem with Minnesota food culture and what we stand to lose is that we haven't identified Minnesota food culture as a valuable thing, and we don't even know what's in it. And so that's why my article is sort of a place to start. Like if I could, wave my magic wand, first of all, I would have every Minnesotan kid take home ec so that they know how to cook food for themselves, right? That would just be a basic. Like I
Yes.
think that you should not have 18-year-olds going out into the world who don't know how to provide for themselves when the chips are down. And they would know how to make some, basic Minnesota foods, which would include bread. Like I really think that. And then I would also then found a Minnesota Foods Appreciation Society, and every Minnesotan would have to spend like 15 minutes a year going, you know what's great? Rhubarb pie. Why is rhubarb pie so great? Like, okay, so rhubarb is another thing. It needs the winter.
Yes.
It comes up in the spring. It makes us appreciate life. Like, you have to learn how to make pastry crust. If you have a rhubarb plant and $5 worth of flour and butter, like you could, eat pie for a month. That's a thing that I would put in the Minnesota food canon. And then I would put, other ones. Like sweet corn is absolutely the greatest. You know what else is the greatest? Eating sweet corn at the state fair or at another place where you're in public with other people and celebrating your community. Like, what's better than a sweet corn feed? Nothing. And so I would, love for everybody to just start building a canon of these Minnesota foods and appreciate them, because you can't make efforts to not lose something if you don't know what it is. Does that make sense?
No, it makes tremendous amount of sense. And I think that there is a tendency to say, well, that's, we're not being inclusive. And I think the reality is as your article points out, these are the foods of the area. This is what was here. That's not, disrespecting anyone else. We're just talking about the foods that were here. And you bring in the Native American foods that they brought in. This is what was here. And if we don't appreciate what's here and we just change everything to everything else, it's lost. And I couldn't agree with that more. I think that there is a great amount of pride I take in feeding my kids as a Minnesotan would. And I think that, and it's gone with them, as you said, they all know how to cook. And I think that they know how to cook. And I hope that they do appreciate rhubarb when it comes up, and they do appreciate a good walleye and wild rice that is, made perfectly. I think these are things which every kid should appreciate.
I do. And I also think is the inclusivity conversation is like, no one lives in Minnesota because you're forced to, right? You live here because you want to, you like to. And generations of Hmong farmers, like, they are part of the local flavor, and they also eat the things that require winter. Like if a Hmong farmer who chooses to be in Minnesota likes it here, you don't push them out of the conversation because they don't have some blood quantum going back 1,000 generations.
Exactly.
Like, you live here and you choose to live here. Like, the Hmong diaspora is here because they like it, and they are our friends, and we live here together, and we have a Minnesota food together. Like, that's what we do.
And and frankly, they've made some fantastic ways to cook it, because I think that's one of the best things about this town is the diversity of flavors that we have right now.
Oh yeah, exactly. Like, Minnesota is pork country, right? Because that's another, pigs can live outdoors all year round. Like, they don't need a heated barn. They just need a big pile of hay. And then they will just burrow under the hay, and then they will just be little hay mounds, when it's super cold. Like, pigs don't need heat. Not in Minnesota. They don't. And that's why we are, the land of Hormel. And that's why we have, you go to Kramarchuk, this great Ukrainian heritage butcher in Northeast, and they make Hmong sausage, now, because Hmong people love pork sausage, and Ukrainians love pork sausage, and the people of Hormel love pork sausage. And like, that's what we do here.
Dara, I wish we could, you and I'm having you back. If you would like to, I would love to have you back. You are just brilliant. You're a fantastic writer. Go get a subscription to Minneapolis St. Paul. Read her articles. They are fantastic. Find What is Northern Food. That is one of the better articles you'll find about food I've read in 10 years. It is absolutely fantastic. Dara Moskowitz Grumdahl. Dara, once again, anytime you want to come back, thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate being on.
We'll take a break. Come on back. Wrap up the show when we do return. It's the Matt McNeil Show right here on AM 950.
Seward Co-op is now offering convenient self-serve and prepackaged hot options and salad bars at both the Franklin and Friendship stores. Breakfast items available daily until 11 a.m. and brunch served all day every Sunday. Their weekly lunch and dinner menus highlight cuisines from around the world. They offer vegan, vegetarian, and gluten-free options daily. 95% of the ingredients used are organic from small-scale, local community food producers whenever possible. More at seward.coop.
Do you have a car you no longer need but don't want to jump through all the hoops to sell yourself? Rudy Luther Toyota can help with their We Buy program. It's really simple. Go to rudyluthertoyota.com, click on the We Buy link, type in some basic information, and Rudy Luther will get you an instant and accurate offer. Then set an appointment, and after a quick verification of the vehicle, Rudy Luther will set you up with your payment with a check on the spot in most cases. We Buy, it's that simple. For more details or to sell your vehicle, head to rudyluthertoyota.com. That's rudyluthertoyota.com.
Replacing your appliances can be daunting. Unstaffed superstores, confusing product reviews, and higher prices. It feels like the cards are stacked against you. But at Warner Stellian, the only thing we stack are the savings. Right now, save an extra $50 to $500 on each new appliance on top of instant savings. Then get a bonus for each extra appliance you add for up to $500. And you'll save time with our specialists. From shopping to free professional delivery. Stack savings you can't get elsewhere from Minnesota's appliance specialist, Warner Stellian.
The Senior Linkage Line is a free statewide service of the Minnesota Board on Aging, helping older Minnesotans and caregivers find answers and connect to services and supports. Questions about Medicare, transportation, looking to move to senior housing, overwhelmed with prescription drug plans? Call the Senior Linkage Line at 800-333-2433 or visit trellisconnects.org, where we help people optimize well-being as they age. That's trellisconnects.org.
AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. It's the Matt McNeil Show. Well, a lot there that we could break down. My goodness, a lot there we could break down. It is an absolute crime that we don't cherish what we have. I mean, one of the things I've found about the rise and the interest now that we have with Native American food is that it's not like the Native American food wasn't here. It's just we kind of gloss over these things. And, I think that one of the things that I found to be interesting about food when you do talk about it is that there's always an impact from the people that know the land and the people that work the land. That those are that's where you get a tremendous, and it might not be so linear. I'll make a great point about this. We're coming up on St. Patrick's Day. Well, the Irish were given the worst cuts of meat, and they learned how to, made corned beef out of them. And it was kind of one of those things where, and as my Irish friends will tell me, we don't have corned beef. We have corned beef, but we don't care about it over here because it's American Irish, because if anything, it shows you the resiliency of the immigrant Irish when they came over here to basically be able to sustain. So you have the people that know the land, you have the people that work the land that come in and know how to make the most out of something. And that is where we're at today, is that we when I was a kid and dandelions started popping up, I'd see people in my neighborhood go on out there and start digging up dandelions, not to throw away, not spraying weed killer on them. It was a blessing. We got greens. One of the things I've tried to convey to my kids is that just in my lifetime, we have gone from a society where you had blueberries when they were in season. You had strawberries when they were in season. You had, even back then, we had apples and bananas and oranges that were kind of universal year round, but you didn't have any of the specialty fruits. Now you can go buy anything, anytime. That has dramatically changed. But does anyone buy a strawberry in December and think it tastes as good as a strawberry in June coming from a local farm? No, of course not. And if we lose that identity, I agree wholeheartedly. I think that this is a real tragedy. And the people that are out there, she was talking about the Hmong farmers the small farmers that are out there trying to preserve these crops and preserve these things, they're grossly outmanned at this point as they're trying to preserve our food heritage. And it's not only are they outmanned when it comes to climate change, but it's also the focus of corporate farming. I think that you have to look at this and say, do we want to make sure we keep our unique northern identity? Or do we just want to basically be, what you find in the gas station? I guess. I don't know. I hope we change, because I've raised my kids to appreciate all the foods we have here in Minnesota, because we're Minnesotans. That's why. We are back tomorrow. Have a good one. Till then, see ya.
Hi, I'm Scott Shambot from Shambot Family Dentistry. We're the fear-free, shame-free dental office. We know dental anxiety